Hey, Redemption Church, Pastor Matt here, and figured it was time, now that it's November 1st, to give a bit of a building update. And this update isn't going to be able to cover every base and answer every question, but this has gone on for a number of weeks where I've been wanting to do something. We've still been waiting for a lot of information to roll in. We're still kind of in this yellow light phase again of waiting for more information to roll in, but I felt, man, it's important to let you kind of know what's going on right now and everything else. I'm not sure how long this video is going to take as far as walking through the information, but the reason I do these and the reason that sometimes they can take upwards of 15, 20, even 30 minutes is because I'm a big fan of transparency. I'm a big fan of clarification. I'm a big fan of making sure that you have all the information that I know, that I'm aware of, that I can give to you, so that you are fully educated on everything that's going on. But the reality is there's a lot of information even I don't know right now, and that's what makes it a little bit challenging. So I was kind of hoping to maybe wait a little bit and get a little bit more, just some answers to questions, but I figured the way things were going, I just get to it now. So anyway, here is kind of the bare bones update, some of the things that we've been kind of faced with as far as challenges. You know, there was recently an email we sent out saying, hey, pray for this particular date with a meeting with the city. Since then, we've been doing some things. I'm going to get into that here in a minute. But again, some of those things just aren't answered at this point. So let me kind of step back now into late September. We were just getting ready to close out our big financial campaign, because if you remember, we said that what we wanted to do was raise $750,000. We did that in the course of 7 weeks. Actually blew past 750, raised 886,000 total. Yes, that's the number, which was huge. And that number was designed to be kind of an augmenting of building payment for like 2 to 3 years, right? So we said, hey, what it's going to cost to service the mortgage on a monthly basis versus what we bring in, and on average month, those had a gap in that number, right? And so we said from that, we want to be able to augment between $20,000 and $30,000 a month for the next 2 to 3 years, so that we can kind of grow into the building payment. And so we raised that money, which was super exciting, and we're like, man, we're good to go, right? So we were just finishing out kind of closing the lending side with the Assemblies of God, and the last step in finishing up the lending part of that was for them to do an appraisal on the building once it was finished, right? So they look at the plans, they look at everything else, and they go, this is what we say the appraised value is going to be. Now, if you remember back a little ways, we actually were looking at going with a local lender. They did an appraisal on the finished product, and they concluded that the building would be worth $4.5 million when it was done. But to complete the project, to actually build the building at this point, would be about $8 million to build. So we had $8 million to build it, but the value of it once built would only be 4.8. And we were just completely deflated by that number. We're like, how can that be? Our builder was surprised, our project manager, our engineers, they were all surprised in the same ways. And what it seemed to be is that the appraiser looked at comps from other churches that have sold in the area, not just like commercial buildings or whatever else. And because churches are so specialized, it limited who would buy it. Therefore, it reduces the value of it because it's going to be so particular, right? So we're like, okay, on the second appraisal, it's got to be better, because again, the second appraiser is going to come in, hopefully understand it's more going to be like, it has the potential to be more of an office building. If, the lender needed to take it over and sell it again, it was going to be more an office building than it would be a church. That was kind of what we were hoping. So the Assembly of God hired a blind appraiser, as far as they didn't come in, they weren't front loaded by the AG on what this was or whatever else. They were blind to the data, basically. They just had to look at the blueprints, come up with a number, and their number for the appraisal was actually less than the previous one. At about $4.25 million is what the total building would be valued at once it was built. Still take roughly $8 million to build it, and it would only be valued at 4.25. And so from that, of course, not only is it kind of a bummer that we have two appraisals that have that number attached to it roughly, but that also affects then how much the Assembly of God was willing to lend based on final appraised value. And so hopefully you're tracking with me at this point, that they said, hey man, we're willing to do the loan, but we are not willing to loan as much as you're needing to finish the project. So here, I'm going to try to run through the numbers really quick. When all is kind of said and done, and we kind of reran some of the numbers, to move forward as of today, right? So from today to the end of the project, it's calculated out at about $7.7 million to finish it, right? Because that number of 8 or 8.1 back in the day, that included numbers that we've already paid out. So we've already been paying for architectural, engineering, a lot of the soft costs. We've paid out almost $500,000 in soft costs since we've started this whole thing in the last couple of years. Therefore, from today to the end, it's $7.7 million to finish it. Based on that, the Assemblies of God said, hey, we'll loan you $3.6 million to do the project, which means then you have to come in with the rest. So for us, that's roughly $4.1 million. These numbers are getting a little bit adjusted as we go. But basically, if I just try to keep it as simple as I can for us, because I don't want to get into all the exact dollars and cents, but the simplified form is that we have to come in with about $4,050,000 to have a down payment, and then they will loan the rest. That's kind of what I was looking at. For us as a church right now, we are sitting on roughly $4.4 million in our savings once we figure in that recent building campaign that we had. So while we wanted $750,000 to be kind of the rainy day augment payments for the next 2 to 3 years, the blessing is because we raise that money, we can use some of that money to put toward the down payment. So what that then calculates out to is we're taking about half of the total money raised in the most recent campaign, about half of that $880,000, $886,000. We're taking half of that and adding it to our down payment, and then the other half will be there to augment the building payment for not 2 to 3 years, but more like 1 to 2 years, right? Like depending on how it all plays out. Because by putting more down, it means our monthly payment's going to drop, which is great, but it means we also don't have quite the runway we were hoping for. But the way I kind of look at all of this is like, hey, God knew. Like, we didn't know what we didn't know as far as what the new appraisal was going to come in at, but God knew, hey, the appraisal is going to be low. This extra money, you thought it was going to be for X, but it's going to be for Y. That's not an uncommon thing to have God do. Like you planned for this, but I actually planned for something else. And guess what? I've got you the whole way. Because if you're maybe new to this process with us, one of the things we said a couple of years ago when this whole thing went underway, as soon as we knew it was going to be an expensive project, it was going to seem unattainable, we just made the commitment as a leadership team that we were going to keep walking through whatever open door was there until there was no more open doors there. And so, when that whole agreement was made, we had about $500,000 in the bank total. We had a paid off building at the time, but we knew that the number was going to be high on building, right? And at that point, it was like $6.5 million. So it's gone up even since then. But we just said, hey, we're going to walk through doors until there's no more doors to walk through. And so we keep walking through doors, and God keeps providing through your generosity and all the things that have come together. And so basically this recent big financial campaign that we just did, half of that now is going to go toward the down payment. But from that, the AG's like, great. And so what's cool about this is that it locked in our interest rate with the Assembly of God, which is 6.5% for a commercial loan, which we all know right now, even housing now has gone up north of 7%, right? For interest rates on just housing. Commercial is always more than housing, but AG locked us in at 6.5. We're just finishing up closing the loan. Normally, you can't close a loan with the Assembly of God until you have your site development permit. We're still waiting on that. Hopefully, it's going to come in the next week or two, but they said, you know what? Let's go ahead and close the loan. We understand that that's delayed. That's no problem. And then we don't have to put the money down into the loan until we start drawing from it. So currently, the full $4.4 million that we have in savings as a church, it's still in our accounts right now, and we don't have to transfer that money as the down payment, that $4 million of the 4.4. We don't have to transfer that in for the loan until we start drawing off the loan for the building project. Hopefully that all made some sense to you. So in that then, in the last month, one of the big challenges was when we got that appraisal, and then the Assembly of God financial arm said, you guys got to come in with $1 million more. And we're like, we don't have $1 million more. But as we worked through all the numbers and we took out the soft costs that we've paid and everything else, it really came down to we needed to come in with a little bit more than $400,000 more. And that was there, right? So maybe as a recap, we're putting down a little more than $4 million. They're coming in with a little bit more than $3.6 million. That should finish the project, and that leaves us with roughly $400,000 in the bank. That's where we're sitting on the financial side. But that was a big challenge. And And, we got that information like on a Tuesday, and then we worked on things all the way up to the following Monday morning. And then that Monday morning, like, oh, we got an answer. We got the numbers. We got this all figured out. Let's send this back to the Assembly of God. Woohoo! Another door we were able to walk through, and we're really excited about that. And then we got a call Monday afternoon. And not related to the lending, this was related to our submission to the city. And here's where I got to take us back in time a little bit and help you understand a process. This is why this video is going to be as long as it is. When we originally submitted our application back in December of 2017 to the city, what we did there is we had to give them elevations, which are basically pictures of what we think the building's going to look like. So our architect gives these renderings of the four different sides of the building, and we say, this is what we're hoping to build, right? So this is about the cosmetics and footprint of the building just from the exterior. There's nothing about the internals at all. There's no guts to it. It's just, this is what we want the box to look like. And then the planning department then says, all right, we authorize you to begin the process of doing all of your architectural work, engineering, everything else to build a thing that looks like this thing that you've submitted. So that came through in 2017 and really under the wire. Like there was a lot of hustle for like 6 to 8 weeks to get that in before there was new changes with the ordinance of the city and we would never be able to build on our property. So that got in and everything else. So that was 2017. So since that time, we've been working on the building, messing around with changing the internals to make everything work, to squeeze into a small footprint as much as humanly possible, right? So over the course of the last couple of years in particular, there's been a lot of work on that. So it only comes together finally. We have new elevations based on the interior and everything else. And to the best of our knowledge, we've stayed within the margins of keeping the building looking as much as what was originally submitted, but there's understandable cosmetic differences maybe when you do a process like that over the long course of time. So we had submitted that to the city then, not for our site development permit, but rather we kind of gave an advanced copy of this to the city for our building permit. And that then goes on to the desk of the kind of the planning committee or the head of the planning committee at the city. And they contacted us on that Monday afternoon and they said, there has been substantial changes cosmetically to the building on the exterior, and they don't comport with the original submission that was in 2017. So these cosmetic alterations seem different enough that it's not apples to apples. Now it's apples to oranges, and you need to go back and make it apples to apples again. And so, of course, that was like, oh, what challenging news. But I want to be clear right here too, because everything teaches. And I know there could be some out there that say, well, is that fair? Is that right? Listen, the city's doing a great job with the job that they have. They have a tough gig working with all these developers and architects and really trying to make sure that you keep a uniformity to the community. And so, they're doing their job. They came back to us and said, cosmetically, this has got to get back on track. And so that's what the current delay is right now. Our architect is going back and trying to, kind of add to what kind of it evolved into a certain look, and now we're moving it back to the original submitted look from back in 2017. And so that should be done hopefully in about another week and a half, and then it's going to go back to the city so they can look at that and see if we've been able to get everything back to apples and apples again, as opposed to apples and oranges. And so, that's where we have a current delay, and we're kind of waiting on that stuff to get done and then get back into the city. But I just want to, again, reiterate that the city's doing a great job. The city has a job to do. It's a rough job. I don't want anybody that maybe has a little bit more like is this government? Like, hey, our government here in our community, we love them. We love our community. We're supportive of what they're doing. And so we're doing our best to be able to get all of that stuff back on track. And then from that, get it submitted. And then hopefully from that, move forward with the building permitting. And then the site development permit should be coming any particular day. So that's the other homework side we've been doing. And it was that cosmetic building stuff. That was the stuff we sent the email out about saying, hey, pray for this meeting. Had that meeting. From that, we were able to go back to the drawing board. And then from that, hopefully we can get all those lines to kind of realign, if you will, and be able to move forward in a way that is timely. So at this point, we're still really looking at this January, February as the time in which we're really hoping to start seeing stuff happen on the property. We were rushing to try to get things done before the rain came, but our soil conditions on our property are so challenging that as we sat down and talked with our builder and everything else, we're like, hey, we can work in the rain. Like, we can work in the muddy months of the year, but you will probably spend at a minimum $100,000, as much as $400,000 just to fight the soil conditions through the winter months. And of course, we're like, that wouldn't be a good use of our finances. That wouldn't be responsible on our part. So we said, hey, let's just go ahead and pause. And so we kind of put together an order of plan that hopefully, if everything goes according to plan and the schedule kind of can hold up, like there in January, we would see the demo of the hub. Then starting into February and March, we begin to see some of the site development stuff happen where they begin to move soil and things of that nature. Because we have to take a lot of soil out, especially on the gravel lot. That used to be, I didn't even know this, a fun historic fact, that used to be a farmer's piece of property, and they had a barn there and everything else. And like, back in the day, a lot of farmers would just bury anything that they didn't want to haul to the dump, and that was kind of where they buried a lot of their stuff. We can't build on something that just has a bunch of debris in there because it's unstable. So we got to take a lot of soil out and then have it laced back in a kind of particular way according to engineering specs. And so we just knew, hey, let's just wait till the weather starts to turn and it isn't just trying to like dig out mud from a muddy, rainy hole, right? That would just be terrible. It'd be pumping water all the time. That would have to be checked for other things going downstream. So we just knew, hey, in the meantime, we'll just kind of hit pause. So the plan, our hope, our desire, our prayer is in January, we begin to see things happen. And between now and January, we can get the site development permit stuff done, the building permit stuff done, and then we can move forward. So that's where the pause is right now. So I just wanted you to know all of that because, again, I'm a big fan of just being open. We want you to know of the financial challenges we had. We want you to know that realistically, the building is twice as much to build than what it's going to be valued at. And if you're still watching this video, I want to add in that final last thing, because some of us, we put on kind of our fiduciary hats and we go like, that seems like a really bad investment. And I go, this project's never been about it being a good investment from a dollars and cents perspective. In fact, going way back when we thought we would never be able to build in Duval, the reason was because we knew it was going to be so financially challenging to do it. In fact, if you look around today at churches of our size, the percentage of churches our size that are like 10 years or younger, like us, they don't build buildings anymore. Churches are increasingly not building buildings. They're leasing facilities because it's too expensive for churches to build buildings. Because churches are very particular things, and lenders don't want to lend to building churches because churches are very particular things. And so all the more, this was always kind of this uphill march, which is why we had this open door concept. We're going to keep walking through open doors because this is just heavy lifting to see accomplished. But in that, I go, if God is wanting to put this together, then he's going to create the means to put it together. And that's what he's been doing. And while an $8 million project, and honestly, just in transparency, when it's all said and done, it's closer to 10. And here's what I mean by that. We bought the hub for a little more than $1 million. We got the property next door to the hub for about $300,000. We've done some upgrade to the hub while we've been there. But you take that price plus the building cost, plus the architectural, plus all that stuff. If you pull it all together, knowing that, hey, what we're going to do with the hub is basically tear it down to build a new building. When this whole project's said and done, it's like $10 million that we will have spent over the course of, from the time we purchased it a few years ago up to the time it's complete. But it puts us in the center of our city for the long haul. It puts us right down on Main Street. It puts us in a location where we can leverage our facility for the good of the city. We can leverage our parking for the good of the city. And it gives us a sanctuary space for decades to come. And that has tremendous value. And sometimes just in God's economy, he's like, hey, man, I'm going to provide the way for you to do this. You're going to spend a lot more to do it, but it's going to prove that I was the one behind it. I was the one that motivated. I was the one that stimulated the generosity of people. And so God's going to get all the credit for that. And he's like, so I'm going to have it be expensive, but I'm also going to provide a way. And that's the way I've kind of looked at this, right? So while I go in my own personal finances, would I buy a house that costs me twice as much than what it's worth? And I go, no, I don't think I'd do that. It would seem insane to me, right? But if God's like, I want you to buy this house that's going to cost you twice as much that it's worth, but there's a purpose behind this, and so I'm asking you to trust me and do this, I'd be like, okay, then I'll do that. Because when I read through the Bible, I see God oftentimes asking his people to do some things that seem on paper kind of backwards, kind of crazy. I mean, the whole essence of the Gospels and everything Jesus teaches is kind of from a worldly perspective, not wise, kind of crazy, and yet it's the way he shows up and provides. And that's the way I'm kind of looking at this as well. So with that, yes, expensive project, but it will put us right in the center of our city. It will give us a long haul location at which to operate from. We will already have more put down toward it than what we have left to pay on it, which is another blessing. Like when I look at all of the different dynamics and I look at all the different roadblocks, and if they keep kind of blowing out like they do, like we keep kicking through another door, God just gets us through another door, then all the more it just is evidence that, hey, he was putting this together. We're not putting this together. We don't have like this hunger for a building. Like we want to be like, God, whatever you want to do. But so far what he keeps having us do is walking through the next door. So a bit of an update there, a lot of moving parts. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us. We just, in this whole process, more than anything else, we want you to know kind of what's going on. I mean, there's so many little mechanics in it that we're dealing with every week, and we don't want to just constantly just throw out updates and spam you with videos every week. But this is pretty fair spot in which to, let you know that this is where things are sitting right now, and even how you can pray. So, it really is just us resubmitting some of this stuff to the city again, now that we've made some of these apple to apple updates, and that should all go through. We're praying that it all goes through fine and everything else. And we're grateful again for the city doing its job and doing its job well. And with that, we just want to make sure we can comport with whatever we need to do. So there's that. Got the financial stuff. Yes, it's a lot of money, but God's been providing a way. I think that's it for now. So I assume some of the process will slow down between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so that's why we're trying to get a lot in now, and then hopefully at the first of the year we'll begin to we'll have green lights and we'll begin to see things happen. So hopefully I'll have some more kind of useful updates, maybe in the first week or second week of December. I wouldn't expect anything maybe before then, but hopefully we'll have something by then. Other than that, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for caring. Thank you for praying. Thank you for giving. Thank you for all the things that you've been doing for Redemption Church. And I'm excited to see what he has for us next. All right, Redemption Church, peace.